doesn't make a copy of an array until it's realized.
I actually helped a development team solve a JSON exception. Well, there's no such thing as a JSON exception, but a deserialization um, exception because they didn't realize that they were using link, and link in general relies on laziness.
Yeah,
I felt so smart when I immediately identified what the issue was. Like,
yeah.
you ever
I
have those
introduced.
moments where like you feel good when people are scratching their head, and like that rare time where you know immediately what's likely the issue, like within like 30 seconds.
Yeah, yeah. I actually had that exact bug, the lazy issue things. The problem is that I introduced it too. But
Yeah.
as soon as I saw what was happening, I knew exactly, like right away, like you said, what it was. Because it's like I had changed something from. I think I realized. Oh, I changed something to an IEnumerable, I think, and it had previously been like a list or something like that, and I
Hmm.
never realized it. And then they did a mutation on it later, and then after the mutation, they then did another like what did they do? They did a mutation on it using link, and then they did like a whole nother thing after that or something like that, and it just reset it re-pulled everything through the method chain. So I was like, shit. It's so obvious. Why did I miss this? But I don't know.
Yeah.
I even had noticed that the because it was like a date modification for time zone or something. I'd even noticed the dates were messed up, and I'm like, oh, that's. I don't know why I brushed it off. I'm like, I don't know. I usually am pretty good about seeing things, but every once in a while I get this thing where I see it and I just brush it off, and every time it bites me in the ass. So
Yeah. I want to go back to programming. No, let me qualify that statement. I want to go back to programming where I plan out how things are going to be laid out. Yeah, I feel like I'm more content, and I feel like I'm actually producing value when I'm like leading by example. Anyways,
yeah, yeah, I know what you mean. Haven't done a lot of programming in the last few months. I mean, little bits, but nothing substantial.
uh,
Really want to. uh, I don't know.
I wish I could get some developers to do a charity for me for beach delivery where they just deliver it over the finish line and it's a gift to me. Yeah, I was thinking about that in the shower. Like, man, do I really want to muster up 20, $30,000 to get this thing in production? What's I mean, honestly, what's left for this MVP is literally I need I need a prod environment in addition to my dev environment. I need to be able to realize that there's bugs and safely test the bug fixes without affecting the business. And it's either my physical health of maintaining a regiment or a ritual, or waking up in the morning and the first thing that I do, what I used to do, probably for like 3 4 years, is spending an hour writing code before I start my day.
Hmm.
And as I get older, I think my physical health is a higher priority than trying to evolve my career.
Yeah. I was gonna say I think too that when I don't know if this happens for you, but once you get into the actual dealing with infrastructure, like it becomes just painful. I know that there's like developers who that's their favorite thing is dealing with infrastructure and you know basically more operations type work. And I feel like it's now like gotten to the point where it's, oh, everyone's got to be proficient in both development
Full
and
stack.
yeah. Well, full stack used to mean front end, back end, which okay, I can sling some JavaScript. But when you get into, okay, you need to do that, and you need to know how to deploy this to Kubernetes, it's like, what? No, I don't want to know all of that.
They
I
need
want to
to
be good at
say,
one thing.
yeah, they need to change the term full stack developer to we need a developer that is IT,
Yeah.
like end to
Oh,
end. You analysis, design, build, deploy, monitor. We need that one developer, and we're going to pay you $65 an hour.
yeah.
So
They should call me utility developer. So I don't know. I get no enjoyment whatsoever out of dealing with actual like, I don't know, like
you mentioned in
deployment
last
infrastructure. Yeah.
you mentioned in last masterminds that you're not interested in being a solutions architect and thinking about all the E's, availability, scalability, all that stuff, security.
FERPs. You call it.
That's the
You ever
acronym?
hear? Well, you ever hear the FERPs model?
No.
I used to when I was in my was doing like more software engineering type classes. FERPs was one the acronym people put around to describe requirements. So it's and FERPs was functional uh, is one, but then there's like usability, reliability, performance, security, safety, and then there's like Surf FERPs Plus because you get into more things than that, accessibility and blah blah blah. But
That's, here's a disclaimer. I still don't know what functional requirements are. Like I don't know the difference between like requirements and functional requirements. Can you help me? Like, what's the definition of functional requirements?
a functional requirement, gosh, I feel like I'm gonna like do this bad, but it's so imagine like all of those other things don't really you aren't really specced out, like the reliability, performance, security, safety, whatever. It's literally just what the system's supposed to do, right? That's your functional requirements.
Would that be a business feature requirement?
Yeah, yeah. So it's
Okay.
like this, you know, sends an invoice to the customer. That's a
Okay.
functional requirement because
Is
it's
that term overloaded?
yeah. Well, I mean, functional is ambiguous now within software context, so well, it's always been ambiguous, I suppose, but I don't know. There's probably a better name for it out there. Um, you could probably say it's like the domain requirements, or I don't know, software. Yeah, it's about what the system does more than how it like behaves, or I don't know how to. Yeah, maybe I could grab a book and see if they give you a really sweet,
I mean, I could
simple,
Google it.
concise
It's
answer
just
to it. Oh, here we go. Here was my textbook from one of the master courses I was taking before I decided it was worthless. Let me see if they have requirements in here. Requirements engineering, non-functional and functional requirements is, oh, I opened right to the page. Let's see.
a function of a system or its component where a function is described as a specification of behavior between inputs and outputs.
Oh, here we go. The functional requirements. These statements are statements of services the system should provide, how the system should react in particular inputs, and how the system should behave in particular situations. In some cases, the functional requirements may also explicitly state what the system should not do. And then non-functional requirements, these are constraints on the services or functions offered by the system. They include timing constraints, um, constraints on the development process, constraints imposed by standards. Non-functional requirements often apply to the system as a whole rather than individual systems or features or services.
Okay, I think I get it.
Yeah. Another one might be like they have a little diagram here about the audience. So they don't really say, um, feature, non-feature, but user requirements versus like system requirements. Um, I don't know. Non-functional requirements, product requirements, organizational requirements, external requirements.
Like if I change my regiment and instead of waking up in the morning and going for a run or bicycling, and I just start returning back to my hour of beach delivery, it's going to be damn near impossible for me to, after deploying beach delivery and patching things up so that it's stable, to get back into my physical exercise regimen. Like I feel like I'm torn, man.
What about just staggering, or one day, one day, one day, one day? Like you shouldn't. I mean, running every day might not actually be very good for you, or whatever
Uh,
if you're doing running.
I
But
exercise Monday through Thursday, and then I try to pick either Saturday or Sunday to run or to either work out and possibly run or bicycle. Um,
because you could do, let's say, you know, um, Tuesdays, Thursdays, or something, work on beach delivery, or Monday, Wednesday, work on beach delivery, and then the other days, and then just do that till you're done with beach delivery, and then switch back, because you still have like your other days. You should be expanding days again.
like what you're saying makes sense, but mentally, like if I don't develop a habit where I'm just, like a dog, you take it outside, it immediately raises its leg and just starts pissing on fire hydrants. Like I feel like I'm kind of wired the same way. Like if I don't have a ritual and it's not consistent, hence probably the definition of a ritual or a habit, it's going to be really hard for me to like be be physically or health be be responsible. There's no such thing as healthily, but basically there it's going to be extremely difficult for me to maintain my health.
Hmm.
And things are getting serious, so I'm trying my best to like do what's in my influence to try to stabilize things. So
Yeah, I suppose the only other option is to put something else to the back burner. Somebody I used to talk about the idea of like your life's like a stove, and you've got four burners, and you can keep like two things on the front burner, or a few things on the front burners. Maybe there's six burners. I don't know. A few
are
things on the
there
front burners. There's things on the back burners.
are there any countries where slavery is legal?
Yeah.
Where?
Oh gosh. What? Probably like. Well, actually, I mean, the United States. If you're a prisoner, technically, you're kind of enslaved. But um,
I wish I could have a slave that could finish speech delivery for a discounted price.
let's see.
Need some free labor.
Slave countries
I think
where
Libya is one of them.
slavery in the 21st century, contemporary or modern slavery. Well, we can get married, so there's that. Just
What?
kidding.
Husbands being slaves?
No, well, slaves to each other, I suppose.
So that they
Um,
don't get served those divorce papers and then lose half of everything that they spent 20 years building.
yeah. Top 10 countries with the highest prevalence of modern slavery. Oh, maybe it's not
Libya.
legal though. Well, this
I
says
bet
that
you.
India has the most slaves in modern slavery. It's funny because like every site you go to is like pointed at talking about the United States slavery. It's like it's been hundred like a it's been 100 years, over 100 years.
You remember? You remember the date of Reconstruction?
No, it
I
was
thought it
like
was 18. I thought it was 1876. 75. Hold up, let me Google.
Oh, here we go. Slavery is legal in 94 countries, apparently. I wonder if it says which ones. Doesn't.
Civil War Reconstruction timeline. It was 1861 to 1877. All right, so my date was towards the end of it. You can be a contractor and start rebuilding Ukraine once the war is over.
Yeah, war tends to be really good for pocketbooks. The big question is will like
Before
it,
and after. Well,
yeah,
depending on if you're a first world country, after is applicable. But I'm not sure how much money poured into Vietnam after the war. You would think that China probably invested the most in it, or would it be Russia?
yeah, I'm not
Mm,
sure. It's interesting though that
I should know. My
like
son's freaking
Vietnam.
Vietnamese. Vietnam War.
It's yeah, it's interesting to see how like the end of the Vietnam War, like how U.S. has normalized ties with Vietnam, and we're generally like pretty well like like connected with each other, right? There's a lot of business kind of done between the two, and there's no real animosity.
Yeah, I've had this conversation a couple times where I may have even shared it with you, where I'm slightly offended when I see uh, senior citizens rocking, Vietnam veteran like ball caps or jackets. Uh, One is because I have ties to Vietnam, and two, I feel as if they're celebrating or marketing uh, just the murdering of the Vietnamese people for imperialist interest.
No, I don't take it as that, man. It's like for the most part, um, I'm stating like U.S. soldiers. Yeah, there was some bad ones in Vietnam, but for the most part, there are people who went and just did what they were told to do. Now, if you saw somebody rocking a Vietnam politician cap, that'd be a totally different story, right? Because it's they don't choose what they do, right? They don't like soldiers don't choose what they do. They can, I suppose, like you can go against and say we're not here for this, but at the time and that energy, like they went to war and they did, they had to deal with a lot of crap that we don't have to. And regardless of what the effort is that they did what their duty to the country was according to what the country wanted.
And is that something to be proud of? Because the country wanted you to do it versus the lives that you destroyed.
Is it something to be proud of?
If 24 months from now, right,
Yeah.
um, the Russians here in Sunny Isles, Miami, decided to rock some Z like paraphernalia or apparel, and they're rocking their ball caps, they're rocking their jackets because they proudly served in the Ukraine war. Would the argument that I think you're sharing still be applicable?
Yeah, they
Because
didn't
their government
choose.
told them to do it,
They didn't choose to do it.
regardless of the atrocities that were committed.
Yeah, they didn't choose to do it, and it's a painful thing for those Russian soldiers. A lot of them, a lot of families suffered and stuff. It's a I don't I think you need to take this as more of like a this is a
Obviously, I'm not a soldier, right? So I
yeah.
understand that I'm speaking likely from ignorance. But my thought process is they're marketing a try. What I feel they're doing is they're marketing their proudness of participating in atrocities, and that's the disconnect that I have because I sincerely believe that.
Yeah, I mean, you could say that about every war. Then, how many Germans were slaughtered in World War II?
Most of the men that were probably
Yep.
between the ages of 16 and probably like 50.
So take off those World War II ball caps too. War itself is slaughter. That's what it is.
Well, there's a difference between slaughtering military targets versus slaughtering uh, civilians.
Yeah. Okay. So then you get into the finale. The yeah is there were bad apples in in Vietnam. There definitely were. There's bad apples in every war. Vietnam was the first time we got to see that because there was actual like reporting embedded within like the country. There's probably just as many atrocities of people getting shot for and civilians getting crapped on in World War II or World War One. Especially World War One was bad. Probably like that. I mean, going back, the history of war is all about that. But the thing is that if if politicians don't hadn't made decisions to put people in there, none of that would have happened.
I think I think you understand what I'm trying to communicate
Yeah.
is when I see people rocking Vietnam veteran, I think about the videos, like the documentaries of real time footage, or what I believe, or what was presented as real time footage, as well as like the Hollywood movies. But I mean, there is a huge civilian like casualty, like
Yeah.
a lot. I mean, and there was probably a couple million like just Vietnamese people, regardless of them being soldiers or civilians, that were just killed. And so, like, again, regardless of them being sent there involuntary, why does it say Vietnam veteran instead of saying Vietnam survivor, right? Why why is it okay for them to market that they involuntarily went to the other side of the planet that in theory we had no business being in except for to stop the spread of communism at the expense of murdering people that were living their life. And that's the part where maybe I'm more quote unquote woke. That's a term that I'm hearing more often within the last couple of months, especially woke. But it's just I'm trying to
No,
choose
this
my
isn't
words.
woke, by the way. So
I'm
that's
trying
not at all woke.
I'm trying to choose my words carefully. But by definition, is there really that many ignorant people? Or are there? I don't even know what the grammar is. Are is that many ignorant people where they can't contemplate the consequences, or they can't contemplate what they're either celebrating or remembering. Because when I see a Vietnam veteran, I see that as something that someone was proud of versus something that's more like reference to like remembering or the memorial. You know what I mean? Like I'm
Yeah.
butchering how to articulate it, but
Well, you don't know that necessarily one that they're proud of what they did there over there. That might not be the purpose of the cap. You might want to go ask in an honest conversation, not in an accusatory stage. Ask what a person who's wearing those caps thinks about it and get their thing because there's a probably very human personal story that they have that would make them choose to wear that kind of thing, and I'm guessing that most of them have nothing to do with killing other people. It's you. I bet you would very few find like people that you go up with a Vietnam cap and say, "Hey, can you tell me about your service there?" And they go, "Yeah, oh yeah, it was great. I went over there and I just totally just murdered like 50 billion of these Vietnam." that's not what's gonna like.
They'll
Maybe
probably
you
use
find a
other
few.
terms, but
I'm
yeah.
sure you're gonna find a few because there's colorful types everywhere, right? But um, you might find one and be like, well, I wear this because when I was over there and I was drafted, I went and I did my part and I lost five of my best friends to this attack or whatever, and I try to make sure I keep them in my thoughts daily, and this cap reminds me of it. Like, you could imagine a lot of different personal human stories. Take the macro out of it and go to a micro level. Like, think about you as an
Yeah.
individual. You got drafted in 1968, or I don't know what year they were doing the draft. You went over there. You had a bunch of personal things that happened. You also don't know what they did in the war when you see it. Like, maybe they wear a Vietnam cap because they're very, very proud of the fact that they went over there as a field medic and that they saved a lot of people's lives, both on the U.S. and Vietnam side. You know, um,
Yeah,
I'm
and
sure we
because
we hurt our we help our wounded, but I'm sure that at the same time our medics help the wounded on the other side as well,
yeah, it just
if they
begs the
were
question: how
captured.
did they get wounded in the first place?
Yeah,
For
yeah, but
for
that's not their
I,
decision to make, other than that they could be like a conscientious objector or try to like just you know, dodge the draft or whatever.
I think I understand and appreciate what you're helping me consider. I'm just not sure how helpful that is or how comforting that is when someone deliberately goes out in public to market that.
Yeah, well, I mean, what you're saying too is that applies to every war, though. Like I'm saying, Vietnam is not the exception. Just because World War II was a justified war doesn't mean the exact same things didn't happen.
Okay, so let's put some
Yeah.
context in there, right? Uh, so so my son, my partner, they're Vietnamese. I spend a lot
Hmm.
of time with Vietnamese people, right? And so, yeah, like her 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 dad or her granddad, whoever, like they served in the war, right?
Hmm.
And so when I'm out in public, and I know most of them are dying off, right? But when I'm out in public and and well, first let me go back. When I watch a Hollywood movie about the Vietnam War and I look over and I see my chick crying, to me, there's something that I don't know about that probably triggered her, right? And then, like, the following weekend, you go out in public and you see, either some black guy or some white guy, elderly person rocking a Vietnamese or a Vietnam veteran like ball cap or jacket, and then you reflect on the Hollywood movie of people getting slaughtered in the action scene. That's a connection that I make is suffering and then someone that is presenting themselves as someone that has been proud to serve. That's the way I interpret it. So that's the context. Is I I look at someone crying because they're looking at a reenactment of village people being murdered, and then I see what my mind interprets as a well-to-do like American that went out there that is affiliated with those atrocities. And so that's the way my mind frames it. I think I understand. You said look at a micro level, and I think I can understand that. But I just want to provide some context.
Yeah, yeah, and like I said, the other thing is you're watching the Hollywood sensationalized or the things that the media projects to you. There's likely millions and billions of events that happened in Vietnam that have nothing to do with any of that at all. And you don't know the story of the guy. He might have watched that same thing and cried for a completely different reason, or for the same reason as the person next to you. And you know, uh, you don't know why somebody chooses to fly the flags that they do. And I'm saying that in a loose term, being like putting on a ball cap uh, of a Vietnam veteran. It might be that they want you to know, like, they've been through some crap, and if they duck in the middle of a from a loud noise, they're shell shocked or something. Maybe they want people to kind of have an understanding of that something. Who knows?
Yeah.
Like you don't know the story of the person next to you, so you're taking a micro event, which is the fact that something happened to the person next to you in a situation that we weren't all there for, um, and extrapolating it to the macro event, and then saying everybody under that umbrella was doesn't deserve to think about it. But it's you find somebody who served in you know uh, or someone who was an Iraqi probably during the last 2 decades, or an Afghani, probably have some very similar things going on. Um, if you go to anybody who's in World War II on either side, and not on just the European side, but the Pacific side too, you're gonna run into a lot of that kind of same thing. Um, so I think that war isn't good for anybody involved in the ground on the ground level. Um, and
So
yeah,
so
but
I assume that you probably disagree with the Confederate monuments that were taken down in southern states,
that I disagree with them. Um,
with the act of them taking them down.
I think in principle I do. Yeah. To be honest, I don't care a whole lot about statues, but I think there's a historical bit to it that um, you know maybe you need to be reminded of of uh, of that. Um,
Uh, well, I think that there's a difference between a statue and a monument.
yeah, yeah, true enough. But I mean, yeah. So I mean, I don't know. I get a I wish I had a better understanding, because like we sensationalize a lot about the slavery aspect of it, but a lot of it was, I mean, slavery was a catalyst for sure, and it was a big part of it, but it there was just a huge gap in culture between the North and the South too. Um,
I would argue it still is.
yeah. Oh, there still is. Yeah. Although we
I
just
live
haven't.
down here, and I'm
Yeah.
like, um,
So you kind of
well, I
wonder.
think it's
Yeah.
more with black people or African American culture. It's very different up north compared to down here. Like white
Yeah.
people, I'm not sure how different it is, but within like black culture, it is different. So
Yeah. So I just wonder how much of it is, and how many of those people that got called up were really slave holding. Because you'd have to assume that the majority of people who held slaves were well to do, right?
yeah, the elite.
Yeah. And so who was fighting them? Were they the ones that were fighting the war? Probably not. They were probably the ones calling for the war. So you're just rounding up a bunch of people who are, working their farms, or working as blacksmiths, or I don't know what they did in the 1800s, and sending them off. And
I mean,
they
it's the same thing today, though, right?
yeah, but they weren't probably told, or didn't even think about, or didn't get the news that, hey, this is all about slavery and our rights to keep the slaves. It was, majority of them probably went to war thinking like, hey, this is for our independence, and our way of living, and that we're under attack, and who knows what they were fed.
Well, they were
um,
probably fed that they were being invaded.
yeah. And so I mean, I'm guessing that there's a huge subset of people that were into that kind of Confederate culture or whatever, that had nothing, that it never meant anything about slavery to them, but at the same time it's tied in with that. So it's just a weird fact. The other thing is like I said at the beginning, we're years away from that. We're like 100 years away from it. All of those meetings and that stuff is all lost now. So it's all whatever we want to come up with in our heads about what actually happened.
That's not true. There's memoirs. I don't know if I'm pronouncing the
Yeah, you
word
can
correctly.
read books about it, yeah, of
Yeah.
like one person's micro experience, and and they could tell stories of the people next to them through their eyes, but you
As
don't.
opposed to what? CNN?
Well, that's what I'm saying, is like all the meaning is lost when you get away from the people that actually were there.
Yeah.
Like I said, you can't go around and survey, you know, 1,000 soldiers to see, hey, did you know you were going for slavery? And if all of them said no, like that wasn't why we were there, and if half of them said we don't even like slavery or more, like what would you say? Like, oh,
No, I mean, I'm not sure how many people voluntarily look. The South or the Confederates, they drafted just like the Union did.
hmm yeah.
So, I
So you get
mean,
called up and you go, and you don't know you're fighting for slavery. You're fighting for your what you perceive as your country. It's your duty, whatever. And those people have a right to be proud of it, even if they're on the losing side of it. Um, in the same way, I think like Russian soldiers, as long as you're personally not doing things that are, outside the bounds of atrocities or like torturing people. If you capture someone, you don't, kill them or whatever. But
so let me capture this, right? Cancel culture, right? You're saying that people have a right to be proud of participating in a organized effort to oppress other people.
do they have a right to be proud of it? Um,
Yeah.
well, yeah, but you're choosing to frame it in terms of one's particular aspect of it. I don't think that's what it was at all. Um, this is you're taking a multivariate variable thing and doing it. So, can you be proud
Purposely, but yes.
of yeah? Can you be proud of saving lives? Can you be proud of saving other people's lives?
With a gun?
No, just
How
just
does that
just
happen?
question. Can you be proud of saving someone's lives?
Yes.
Can you be proud of saving someone's lives that were part of a rebellion or what? How I can't remember what you framed it. Imperialist thing.
You could be proud of saving people's lives. I would argue if you're not choosing to kill other people.
Okay, so if
With it,
if you
and obviously there's context behind that.
yeah
Would you preserve a million lives for sacrificing, a dozen? Maybe people would be proud of that if you
yeah
do the math. Yeah.
s- so what's the difference between the medic and the regular soldier? I mean, a medic saves people's lives on the battlefield, and they can be proud of that. But the
A
person
medic
who,
prioritizes saving the lives
yeah,
of the soldier who's on their side. I think
yeah,
that's one of the differences, right?
but it's the same effort, and that's where I'm getting at is like I don't think you can sum this up as a
No, it's not. It's not, right? A medic's priority, and I'm not in the military, right? So what I'm saying probably isn't true. But my thought process is a medic's priority is to prioritize restoring someone that is disabled so that they can get back on the front line. I would think that that would be the priority. Second would be just preserving their life, even if it means that they are permanently removed from the battlefield, but they get to live out the rest of their life maimed or whatever. But
yeah.
the
Who cares
priority
what
would be
the
getting them back to the battlefield so that they could take more lives.
yeah who cares what the directive is? Your personal experience is that this person would be dead now if it wasn't for you, blocking that hole, pulling the bullet out, and patching it up. How
But
about
at
how
what
about
expense? The government is interested in removing people that are barriers to their interests.
yeah
So a medic's job is to preserve the life of a soldier so that he could continue killing other people that are in direct conflict with what needs to be accomplished on their side.
yeah but
That's the
but
priority.
but you're speaking at the abstract, right? You're speaking at the government, the political, the organizational level. You're not talking about it at the human like level. And that's the thing is that you can be I think that even a German medic can be proud of what they did if they weren't in the SS probably. I mean in
Well,
terms of saving lives. It's
so we can use this is an interesting topic,
yeah,
right? Um, we can use that argument for what what was the name? The was it called Nuremberg? How you pronounce it?
Yeah, Nuremberg.
Nuremberg.
Just following orders.
Exactly.
Yeah,
That's the counter argument. And so no, don't put me on the wall with all these other people, all these other veterans. We were just following orders because at a micro level, like we were proud to save our comrades that were being held up or ambushed, and we saved them by killing off a whole bunch of they're not called civilians. They're called informants, or I'm not sure what the military term is. But people that are traitors, right? But they don't put on the military uniform. Like the thought process is, what's the difference between the people that were tried and executed during the Nuremberg? I feel like I'm still butchering that term.
no, you got it
Trials
right.
versus uh, the civil war or what's currently going on in Ukraine. And I think the answer is it all depends on how you choose to view it,
Yeah,
regardless of
so it's
what's
a
actually
people.
being done. And this goes back to the woke community's repeated phrase of your truth versus general reality of what's really happening. So everything is being filtered to what someone wants it to be
Yeah,
versus the actual devastation, I think, that is really being realized.
yeah, but I mean, you got to take like there's certainly like very evil and sadistic people in the world, and but you got to take like I guarantee you, if you were a soldier during World War II in Germany, you'd be killing people.
I would probably be the first to get killed.
Yeah, or that. Thing is that we like to believe that we would be the people that stand up to like actually stand up to like Hitler, or
Yeah,
didn't
I get it.
decided to throw down our guns and not not kill the Jews, and we'd be those heroes. It's like no, it's like we'd all be in the same place. We'd be the ones saying we're just following orders. It's like majority of people, because that's our human nature.
Yeah,
It's just the way it is. But it's like, I mean, you don't have to necessarily glorify the actual event and not it's not just pride, but to remember, or to contextualize yourself, or to, like I said, fly a flag to demonstrate or to show something that was had a deep impact on your life, um, in whatever way that is. Uh,
yeah.
Nobody today
I think
had,
you're
like I
right.
said, yeah, and I guarantee you, nobody today had the Confederacy, um, have a deep impact on their lives. I mean, maybe at a macro level, but not on any sort of micro level. So it feels like that privilege is kind of lost, or that's really lost. I think the people who probably served in the Confederacy, the actual like troops on the ground, the people that were there because it was their duty, they probably had, you know, just as right as anybody to fly that flag and think about what it meant to them and what happened during those events. So, um, yeah, I don't know. Like I said, it's a all this is so multivariable that it's hard to get into a situation. But I wouldn't, like I said, I think if you want to get down to it, I wouldn't necessarily look at somebody wearing a flag or a Vietnam cap and say that person's bad and this is bad and that why are they being triggering to people and blah blah blah.
That's
If you
exactly what
want,
I think.
yeah, if you want, get to know their story and find out what they actually did.
Yeah,
And if they did stuff that's bad, then do it. But you might find that they did stuff that was heroic or helpful, or maybe their biggest, memory is that, they saved somebody on the other side. You don't even know, right?
point taken.
Yeah. And I'm sure the flip side, is true too. Like it'd be interesting to see how people think about it in Vietnam, because obviously, like we were the aggressors in that war, But do you know, like, do people in Vietnam, when do they think with pride upon killing the Americans, or at a micro level where they are, was that, just a horrible thing that they had to do in a bad situation, um, because they got called up. Are they happy that they, ambushed and killed a whole squad of U.S. soldiers that were just there doing what they were told to do?
They should be.
They should be,
Yeah.
but the other side isn't true because of what side they were on.
It's not about size. It's about intent and who invaded who.
Those people didn't have intent, though. I mean, maybe they were
The
freedom
the the the,
fighters,
the
but
military, those people got on the plane or on the ship, sailed to the other side of the planet, got off the ship or got off the plane, carried their rifles, and went into villages.
yeah, at the command of these people up here. And at the same time, the command of people up here told Vietnam soldier people to take up, AK-47s and fight back, probably at the behest of China, feeding them a bunch of crap, you know, and then they went out and they also ambushed people coming in. And it started with the French actually, and not the Americans, right? Because the French were there and technically were coming in to maintain French imperialism, but it started with that.
I mean, it's the same argument that could be raised about
People want to,
Fallujah.
yeah, people want to be free as a thing in their own country, right? And that's the nature of it. Is the Vietnamese people wanted, even if, regardless of whether you think communism is free or not, they wanted to have control over their own destiny. And in an imperialist setting, it's not that way. But all of those policies and things are set at they're set at the top. They're not set at the people at the bottom. They're just, doing what they're supposed to do, or they're expected to do, based on conditioning of society and all of this stuff.
Maybe. Imagine. I'm about to press your buttons, right?
No, I don't get pressed.
Okay, we'll see. All right.
Yeah.
Uh, imagine. All right, we're talking about Vietnam, right?
Hmm.
We're talking about more than likely short people, certain skin color, certain facial features, right? And they have these people that they probably never seen before, right? White and black. Their roots are not in Asia, right? These
Hmm.
aren't these aren't Japanese, these aren't Chinese. These are people that have no resembling of what they look like at all. These, as far as I'm concerned, are like aliens, right?
Yep.
And they're coming over through villages, setting things on fire. How can you not celebrate when you're defending your family, your village from these aliens that all they want to do is destroy and oppress? You did not go over there trying to change their way of life. They are coming over here trying to change your way of life. These people aren't coming out over here to protect freedom for you.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah. But
coming here to enforce policy of a government that is on the other side of the planet that
there
wants
you
to
go.
control this society's way of life.
Yeah.
How
There
can
you
you
go.
not celebrate when you kill all of them off?
I'm not saying they shouldn't.
Okay.
I'm not saying that they shouldn't. I'm saying, like, but at a micro level, a human personal level, I'm I don't know anybody that should feel good about killing other people in a war. Even if it was justified, even if you had all the intention in the world, should do you want to feel anything but remorse for the fact that you had to do that in that situation?
Yeah, but this goes back to the argument, and I'm trying to make things personal
Yeah.
because I'm trying to get you to raise your voice. This goes this goes back to the argument of wearing the apparel, veteran, right? And you raising the argument that, well, you don't know what they went through, you don't know
Yeah.
how they process those series of events, right? So yes, they could be proud,
Yeah, they could be,
right?
or they couldn't be, or they might not be, or they might wear it for a completely different reason. Go
I
and
have
ask them.
I, I have flashbacks, and this may be even more sensitive because it's more recent, probably the last 20 years. All right, but I have flashbacks of watching the news footage of Fallujah and seeing the burned up contractors with their leg broken half dangling as the crowds are dragging it through the street, right? And if we consider why war came to Iraq, it was either based on misinformation or just based on just flat out lies, right? And so, not going into that debate about why, but can we not understand why the 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 the, the civilians in Fallujah would celebrate when 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 foreigners that look nothing like them, aka aliens, coming there with their machine guns, get killed?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, I get it. I mean, you might be happy about it at the time. If you're the person who actually did the killing, that might be devastating for you. You don't know. I think if
yeah,
I had that happen, I'm just trying to think like if I'm sitting here where I am in the town I'm in, and I we're invaded or whatever, and I shoot someone, I think I'd be a mess. I'm not gonna be excited about it. I'm not gonna be happy. I don't care if people are chanting because there's a group mentality of thing. People, you see one person chant you whatever, but at a personal level, I don't want to take someone's life. I don't want to take a. I shot a deer once for hunting, and it's like I still kind of just I feel bad about the whole situation. It's
well,
like we ate the deer, so it's like there's a kind of more meaning behind it, but it's I don't know, man.
you say that, and maybe your intelligence level is above average. Did you ever see the?
I wouldn't
Did
say
you
it's
ever? Did,
intelligence, maybe empath, but
did you ever
empathy.
see the episode that one episode? Have you ever watched Black Mirror?
But no,
Okay,
I know of the show though.
all right. So one of the episodes in Black Mirror was basically a military unit that was basically seeking out and destroying these like these zombie like basically like zombies. Okay,
Hmm.
and so for each of the zombies that they killed, in which these zombies, they would socialize with other zombies. So they would go into a house like in the basement or an attic, and the zombies would pop out of nowhere, and they would gun them down, and then more zombies would come, and they would gun them down, right?
Hmm.
And they would do high fives, and they were proud to get rid of the zombies. Okay, what really had happened was that that military unit was under the influence of the government, in which they had basically injected some type of whatever, whether it was like substances or whether it was surgery on their eyeballs, whatever, in which the people that they were killing weren't zombies, they were human beings,
Hmm.
right? But they were able to create or an image of the people that they were killing were monsters and scary looking, right? And so it made it easier for in that episode for the military folks to kill these dangerous looking people. And I think when you say that, it would be hard for you to take a life, um, if if your government paints the targets as evil monsters or Nazis, whatever, it'll probably make it easier, and you probably won't have as much, uh, for lack of a better term, compassion for the monsters that you gun down. And so I'm pretty confident that through propaganda, government. I mean, you look at Rwanda and well, you look at the Rwandan war, and the government was painting these people was painting the it was between Hutus and Tutsis. I forgot which tribe they were painting, but they were painting them as like cockroaches. They were referred to them as cockroaches, right? They were making them into monsters, and
Hmm.
that was emboldening people to treat them as subhuman. Adolf Hitler. I would think based on all the content that I absorbed was painting Jews as subhuman, right? In order to get his country
Yeah,
behind it. So
yeah, that's a technique, and people fall for it, and people fall for it in mass, and it's the way it is. And I think that we would all fall for it. Like I said, I don't know on the ground if I would be personally excited about it, and if it was, it would be probably like a facade, right? It would be a that happened, and then it would be going into the back room and thinking about it for the next 30 years, or offing myself, because that happens too. A lot of people,
yeah, I know.
there's a lot of people who were veterans of war that do that because it's a big burden to carry.
I wonder
There's
if that
also
comes with
survivor guilt too. I mean,
I wonder if that comes with age. Um, because I feel like I'm more compassionate as I'm older than I was when I was younger.
yeah,
I
probably.
was never a violent person. Like I didn't like target people. But like the only reason I'll say it, the only reason why I didn't go above and beyond retaliating and using deadly force for people that upset me was because of the consequences of going to prison for the rest of my life. That's the only reason. Like I would have no conscience about killing somebody. I wouldn't when I was younger. I wouldn't. I
Yeah,
would not. Don't, what I cared about is if I go to prison, I'll never have sex again, right? Or at least with a
yeah. With
woman,
women,
right?
yeah.
And so that kept me like that controlled my emotions, right? But as I grow older now, I think I'm more sensitive or more empathetic to others, and yeah, like I think it would bother me. Probably it'll probably take a couple weeks, but it probably would bother me if someone upset me, I retaliated, maimed them or killed them. And then it would bother me that well that person had a son or had a
Yeah, that's what I was
mother
gonna say. Family,
and
like, yeah, blood. When you have someone you care about
and I just
deeply.
made this world more difficult for people living in it. Like it would bother me now as I'm older, but honestly, if it were like 5 years, if it were like 5 years ago, all right, I probably I would be going to Disney World, not thinking about it. All right, so that I think psychedelics altered my mind.
Hmm.
So
Could be, yeah, yeah, or could be other things. The presence of having a a kid changes a lot in terms of, well, it might change a lot.
no,
I know it
it
changes a
does.
lot for
It's
some
just a
people.
lot of different realms, right?
Yeah, but because you
I feel
said
like
you
my
grew up with like
testosterone levels dropped significantly since having a kid.
but you grew up. You said, I think you said that your family wasn't the best situation. You ended up homeless. So like maybe your attachment to human beings like wasn't really strong, and then you once you had a kid, you found that more. Because there's this weird, like even if you like are really annoyed with, and I don't know if you've gotten to that age yet where you're like times where your kid's just really annoying and you're like, you know, but at the same time, you don't want anything to happen to them. You want to make sure like your
I had
prime
this
directive is to make sure that they're safe as possible.
I had this debate a couple of days ago
Yeah.
where the question was if uh, if your son or daughter, I mean it doesn't matter what gender, um, murders somebody, like would you turn them in? I'm like no. And she's like, how could you do that? I'm like, that's my son. Like that's my family. I pledge allegiance to family. Like I mean it's too bad, whoever he killed, but like that's my son. like
Yeah.
and that was a huge disconnect. I think
I think it
most
would depend
people.
on I think it would depend on the context. Like, they kill them out of self defense. They kill them out of trying
I mean, if your
to
son's a
save
serial
someone.
killer,
Yeah. Well, that's the
and,
thing.
and,
There
and
you
it's
go.
not just a one-off, but like he's consistently like gunning people down or stabbing them, yeah, like I think
If
you have a
you're
moral. You have a moral. My vocabulary is what's the
yeah,
word I'm
yeah,
looking for? A
moral duty.
moral
Yeah.
duty to like stop that.
Yeah. So that's the thing, as I was saying, like if you just put on that little bit of extra, right? So would you turn your son in if he killed yourself or killed someone? It's like, no. What if you knew he was going to do it again and it was
Yeah.
to an innocent person? Totally changes the dynamic. It's like, well, then, you know what? I can still visit my son in prison. We could still talk, like assuming that they're, not going to get killed in prison because they're like
I,
a child rapist or something.
I would do three strikes, you're out. After the third one, I'm like, all right, I got to do something.
Yeah, yeah. So,
I
but yeah, I
don't know
don't know.
where he gets it from. Like, oh,
Yeah. So it's I don't know, man. Like I said, it's we all try to sum all this stuff up into like single variable, and it's always an it depends type thing, and there's never really a straight answer. And like I said, I don't think that's true of people wearing flags or wearing ball caps or being on what side of the war you're on or any of that. It's like there's a personal human experience behind everything, and even the bad ones are probably valuable in terms of like un- you understanding like the bad like people that actually did atrocities and did them on purpose and enjoyed it. It's like it there's some like reflective stuff there where you say how far away am I from that and how do I make sure that people don't be like that and what can I do to not be that way. So the bad kind of um, you know sheds light on how much of capacity we have for bad things. But there's also a lot of good things. Like I said, there's a lot of heroism. There's a lot of saving people. There's a lot of, you know. Have you ever watched the movie Lone Survivor?
yeah, a long
So
time ago. Yeah.
yeah, so like it's like you watch that and there's a part of you that watches it and goes, okay, they let the boy go instead of killing him, so that's good, right? They didn't commit an atrocity there. That's great. They're under attack. They get basically, yeah, they kill a lot of enemy soldiers at that time. Um, and you kind of watch it and you're like, okay, so you're on the American side. Maybe you're not, but and then like at the end when the Afghani like group like hides him, at the end and takes care of him, and protects him from um, the people that are trying to hunt him down to kill him. Like there's like that's like a mad respect or whatever for the I don't like saying that, but I'm trying to like I don't know what I'm trying to articulate, but it was just a powerful moment to see like the this Afghani tribe who's just living their life, in their willing to kind of like put themselves up against this rebel force within their own country, out of a duty to protect people, which is I think was part of their religious or I don't know if it was a clan thing. I can't remember exactly what it was, but there was something that they have like a societal duty to protect people who are harmed like that, which is really good. Um, I do also like it. Have you watched We Were Soldiers from the Mel Gibson movie?
I
Um,
don't think so.
so that's a Vietnam one, and it's about like, and there's yeah, you want to talk about like,
I mean,
it's
I watched
probably the
Full Metal
one of
Jacket like a month ago.
yeah
Again, I
yeah.
watch that movie like every 3 years.
But yeah, watch if you want. Well, don't watch it with with your other significant other one. Watch We Were Soldiers with Mel Gibson, because that's a Vietnam War movie. But one of the things that he tries to do in that movie is not just try to focus on the idea that it's entirely the American side and there's no honor on the other side or anything like that. He actually, you can. There's a scene where he's got like I think the commander of the Vietnam side, and it's like doing some sort of prayer or something like that, and really like you know uh, he doesn't try to paint them. Oh, and there's a guy with a picture of his wife or whatever stuff like that on the Vietnam side, and
Hmm.
he tries to paint it as like both of these sides are doing. There's a very human aspect on the ground level, and these are real people on both sides, and they're just in this situation, right? Um,
I want to see a Hollywood movie that focuses on the perspective of the Taliban or of Al Qaeda and shows their view of things. It will probably never happen within
yeah, I
a
don't know.
fully production movie.
Yeah,
They'll get canceled before they even started. But like, there's always two perspectives. Like, I mean, there's a couple of famous quotes, right? One of which is by Malcolm X, and it's probably going to take me a while to find that quote. But his quote was basically saying, "Be careful. They'll tell you that the people that are the heroes are really the ones that are the oppressors and blah 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 blah." And I think it's the same thing. Like, yes, we have been drilled in our heads that people that are on the other side of the planet that wear different type of garments and carry AK-47s, they're terrorists. That's been drilled into our head. And whenever there's mass shootings in the United States by a white person, that's not a terrorist. Okay, but what's the difference between a terrorist and a freedom fighter? And because I I I I, I know I'm going scatterbrain right now. I try my hardest to figure out the story of Russia and Ukraine, and I can't find any footage or perspectives that support the Russian side. YouTube won't show it, CNN won't show it, Al Jazeera won't show it. There has to be another side to the Russian conflict that doesn't paint them as evil oppressors. I can't find those details. Anyway, I'll say all this because I mean we're being fed information that is meant to support the agenda of our governments.
yeah, and I think that's what I was getting at with actually. I mean, because you brought up with Vietnam, you talked about movies and stuff and Full Metal Jacket, and that's like a one depiction of it. But if you get down to individuals, even with Russia, and that's what I said with flying the Z flag or whatever, the what are they fed according to what we think they're fed, and is that Ukraine is full of Nazis and pedophiles or whatever, and we're gonna go and liberate them, and
Denazify.
yeah, we're gonna go get rid of all these, and you know, a lot of these people they get the news and they believe that they're doing it probably for right reason, or they do it because of it's their Russian duty to the motherland or whatever, and I'm sure that most of those people just want to be like sitting down in their basement, watching Pornhub and having some vodka or something, like everybody over here wants to do. So it's like there's really not a lot of difference. It's just like these big socioeconomic abstractions that we build that we can kind of like I don't know I don't know. It's just yeah. So I don't know what I'm getting at here, but
Oh, I think I understand.
what I'm saying is that if you want to kind of have, still a good thing, there's a lot of very good Russian people, and there's very good, you know, um, and you got to feel for every mother who loses a son to the Ukraine war in Russia. I mean, a lot of people are losing their kids on both sides, and for reasons they have nothing to do with.
I think I think it's analogous to religion. What percentage of people actually do the research to figure out which religion, if any, that they're going to belong to? And the answer is,
Yeah, none.
I would say less than 1%. I would say less than 0.05% of people that actually do perform diligence and researching and identifying either why they claim to be a religion or why they choose a certain faith.
Yeah.
And it's because of the people that they're around.
But even people who choose, do some level of research, quote unquote, and then become, let's say, an atheist, I think that's not even a genuine thing. Like 90, I want to say like most atheists I've ever run into, the extent of where how they're atheists is that there's Christian God and that's it, and that's my choice, and my choosing not to believe in that projection of that deity, that's atheism. Like,
I was converted to atheist about 3 months ago. I thought I told you.
yeah, but the thing is like, if you look at other potential things, like if you were to believe in simulation theory or to think that it's viable, does that mean that, and that there might be something beyond that? It doesn't explain everything actually if you get into deep on it, because who wrote the simulation?
Hmm.
It's a recursive problem, right? And that's the thing with God, is it's a recursive problem. If God created us because somebody has to create us, who created God? But nobody has to create God because he's the start of it. And you get into this recursive problem otherwise, where who creates God? And it's like, well, if God wasn't created by anyone, then why couldn't we just not be created by anyone? And it becomes this like big whatever. Unless you get into metaphysical stuff. Metaphysics is interesting, where, but still, even in a metaphysical realm, it's like, how does that stuff exist in the metaphysical realm? I don't know. And you
Yeah. Well,
like,
one of my arguments, I grew up as a Jehovah's Witness, right?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So one of my arguments, and I know we're getting up on time, is like, so there's a scripture in the Bible that says that it doesn't belong to man even to direct his own step. Okay. And so it supports, the notion of theocracy, like ruled by God, whatever. And so my argument is, okay, God is perfect. For whatever reason, God has this obsession of wanting to be worshipped. Uh,
yeah. This is
not sure
what
where,
I'm
not sure
saying
where
is,
that came from.
yeah, yeah. That's what I'm saying, is that it's like all of the focus on this is focused on one particular projection of one possible system, and Christianity has a ton of possible systems of what God is and isn't. But then like you get beyond that, and and it's like, well, then there's polytheistic beliefs. There's other things where, like Buddhism, to a certain extent, if you take like more of its core side, the entire idea behind reincarnation and stuff, and technically it's a religion. It's like, but it's actually pretty in line with like the human way of thinking. It's also probably pretty in line with simulation theory, but I don't know.
My biggest
It's
thing is God has what's taught in Christianity. I would imagine the same thing in Islam is God has infinite wisdom. Well, if you if you research the definition of wisdom, my guess is it's probably like lessons learned accumulated over time. That's my guess of what the definition would
yeah,
be in Webster. And so you have to ask the question, if God has infinite wisdom and wisdom is something that you learn over time, then it means that God would have had to learn.
yeah,
And how would God learn? And if and what you were saying earlier, if humans can't come from nothing, but they have to be created, but the source of their creation was God, and God would have to learn. How would God learn? Is that
yeah. It's one big recursive problem. Like
is
I said,
is
it
is it really infinite that you just know everything? And then you take into consideration what humans have accomplished just within like maybe the last 350 years. I can't do the math. Industrial revolution, right? Like you take nearly 3 centuries out of probably 40,000 years of humans, maybe even longer. You take 3 centuries, which is a super, super, super small fraction of 40,000 years, and you look at what we've accomplished. Now we have freaking rovers and machines on like planets. We have rockets that go up, orbit, and come back down and land themselves, right? And you think about what we've accomplished within a certain fraction of eternity versus what quote unquote humanity's perceived uh, perception of God and what God has accomplished for eons.
hmm
And it's hard to say, wow, humans are they're accelerating compared to what God innovates, right? And
yeah,
obviously, we can only look at the Earth or the solar system. We don't really know what else is out there. But
Well,
people fumble on that.
yeah, where God is the infinite, like is a, because I mean, there's conceptualizations that, you know, that basically God started out as a nothing, right? The universe is purely just not created by some creator or anything. It's just it just is, right? And then,
That's a statement or belief.
well, it's just a starting point, right? Assume that there is nothing, right? And everything just exists for whatever reason, and then intelligence starts to come along, and then intelligence moves from no intelligence to supreme intelligence, or like a singularity, right? And that it absorbs all this information about the universe, and it learns how to mold it into its being or whatever. And basically, like, our own evolution gets us to the point where we become so intelligent as a species or whatever, that we can actually then create out of our, the universe is out of ours. And that God started as what we think we can't start as, which is just a, I don't know. Like I said, the thing is that there is so many philosophical possibilities with religion and God and stuff like that. And when you say that people, like, don't do the research, it's like the research isn't there. There is nothing to research. There's no end to it.
No, there
It is
there is
purely
research.
it is philosophical thought.
No, there is research.
The one thing that the one conclusion you can draw from all the research is that we have absolutely no idea.
There is research. The majority of black people and the majority of Latin people do not research history on why they're Christian.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Okay. So,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. But then you can't just stop there. If you say, well, what, they're not Christian, and then what's the conclusion you take? Okay, well, I could be these other things, or I could be an atheist. But should you be an atheist? Anytime you go into some other religion, now you've got to go through the entire motions of understanding that, and then seeing if it aligns with some sort of philosophical underpinnings. And then, it's like you just keep going because there is no answer. The
Or you
one
could just be agnostic.
That's what I am. I think that's
Uh,
the only actual honest intellectual, like, position for religion, is to be like, technically, yeah, technically everything the Christians say could be true. So could the Buddhists, or anyone, or none of them are, or maybe we're all simulated. But then, what is the? It's a big, I don't know, because it's all metaphysical. You can't observe it. It's all, there's no science around it. It's all philosophy. It's just
yeah,
thinking
but
about
there's
questions.
benefits to it. They probably live longer than we do.
Who do?
People that have religion.
Oh, yeah, yeah. That's the thing, is
It's related to part of it's related to placebo, right?
yeah. And so you got to maybe actually think about that. Is it valuable for people to research it if they're not causing harm to anyone else, and it brings meaning to their life, or whatever? Is it actually good to try to take that away from people by suggesting, hey, you need to look this up? If, again, if they're not harming other people, and they're not, and they have a sense of community and purpose.
Well, I would argue that there's a propensity to harm people. That's what the whole caliphate was with ISIS, right?
Yeah, but you're looking at the, like, 2% of people that do that. There's a lot
Two
of
percent
practice.
that causes a number that causes
Yeah,
NATO to get involved.
yeah, but you're like, but there's millions of people just living their lives. They do their natural rituals. They have some sort of belief. They process the world in that way. They just don't get in the news because they're just normal.
that's that that's a viewpoint, but most countries are ran by one person.
Well,
That's
yeah,
all it takes.
like, all the people you meet on the street who are religious, they're not doing any harm to you. They're not going to do harm to you. They're not going to do harm to anyone else. They're just trying to live their life out. I got about 5 minutes. I got to probably jump here, but it's my thing. But I don't know.
For the most part, I think you're right. There's just there's it's a different mentality. So, for example, Jehovah's Witnesses, this world is effed up, and we'll do our part, but yeah, like this earth is going to be like cleaned up. So like, hey, it is what it is. The global warming now we call climate change. Yeah, it was already prophesied. Yeah, there's gonna be world wars. Like it kind of gives an excuse of things are already written by by God, and so that's His will, and things are going to change based on when a higher entity decides it's going to change. And so people don't really have accountability for their part. I think that's part of
Yeah,
religion. Like they can
but
destroy the world because they feel like there's a higher being that has control over it anyway. That's going to make things right when the time comes.
yeah, but I mean, how does that change anything when the people who are doing that, the majority of them are, they go to work and they go home, get milk, eat, watch some TV, go to bed, go up the next day, do the same thing over and again. It's just part of their life. It's not like you're when you get into zealots, yeah, there's zealotry is a problem, but for the most part, if it's a acceptance of, you know, some doctrine and that just becomes part of your life and you're otherwise a good person, who cares?
All right, closing off. Do you
Yeah.
really think Trump or Obama are Christians?
Do I really think they are?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not a mind reader.
Okay. What's the definition of Christian? It's
What is
not.
the
It's not.
definition?
It's not following Christ. It's to be Christ-like. That's the definition of Christian, right? The point that I'm trying to stress is, so far, and we can fact check maybe the next Friday. The majority of presidents, if not all presidents, or people that campaign to be president, when elected, they have to claim to be Christian.
Hmm.
All right, we can fact check next Friday to see if I'm right, or else
No, I'm
Obama.
sure that they are.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
So
I
that's one of
know
the.
it was a big deal that JFK was Catholic. Remember?
Okay.
So, um, but yeah, I don't know. That's because
Yeah.
there's a benefit to it in terms of you're connecting with the community, right? If you
Yeah.
say you're Christian, there's a huge community here of that, and you're saying that I'm like you, whether you are or not. Um, I don't know that it's any different than saying like, uh, I am. Well, it's probably no different than Obama saying I'm black and getting the large black vote. You're part of the community, but uh, you know,
Correction. Any Democrat is going to get a large black vote.
I don't know if that's going to hold true for a lot longer.
It
I
will, as
don't.
long as black. Let me
I
choose my
think,
words carefully. It's
yeah,
true as long as people don't hold themselves accountable for education.
yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I think some of the tides are shifting actually on all of that. I do think that when some of the like the drum beating civil rights people like the Reverend Jackson and stuff like that, once they start actually getting out of the picture,
Al Sharpton.
yeah, once you start doing that, it might actually change the shift the thing. I wouldn't be surprised if both union vote and black vote go Republican in the next like within our lifetime. Plus, it's all
Okay.
cyclical, anyways, right? Because remember, like Republicans were the anti-slavery party, and now they're painted as the racists. So it's got to shift around again sometime.
What needs to shift is not only having two groups or parties to select from, Democrat or Republican.
Yeah.
Okay.
All
Well,
right.
it's
I
been
gotta run.
real. We've
Yep.
talked about two taboo subjects: religion and war. See ya. Bye.
Yep. See ya.
See you again.
Gotta
War.
run. Yep. Bye.